Join us on this multidimensional journey as we uncover the timeless connection between medicine, magic, spirituality, and the mysteries of the universe. I'm Olive.
And I'm Raven.
And
This is the Double Rainbow Podcast.
Welcome back to the Double Rainbow Podcast. It's Raven and Olive, and today we are exploring the concept of spiritual integration, both in the context of plant medicine as well as other transformative spiritual experiences. So, what does integration even mean, Olivia? Because I'm a little bit new to this and I can't believe that I didn't know exactly what this was.
I don't feel like there's honestly been 100% defined definition that everybody's been going off of currently. So the way that I view it is about embodying the energy shifts that we go through in our lives, and that happens at many different points in our lives, but with transformative experiences, new spiritual experiences, and a lot of the time plant medicine work. That's why people do it. So when we go through these things, not only do we see life differently through our mind's eye and through our mind, but we actually experience energy shifts in our different, fields, energy fields and energy bodies. And so when that happens, we can either, integrate that experience and continue to embody that energy or learn from that embodiment or learn from that energy, or we can kind of just push it aside and as something other. So integration is not pushing it aside and not just kind of regressing to past patterns necessarily, but having that shift actually fully occur.
Okay, and so is that you do this for a living, right? So do you step in at that point when the shift has occurred and you help them, or what do you
Yeah.
do? Like, just so everyone knows, because
Yeah, and that's what makes it complex, is because it's going to look different for different people. And I have, some different tools that might work well with one person, but somebody needs something different. So I step in after the big shift has occurred. So after somebody has gone to ceremony, after somebody's just had this kind of big experience in their life, and they are needing support in maintaining that energy, or integrating the lesson that they've learned. So my primary tools, I'm a tarot reader, so I do practice divination, but I would say that is not as much of it as a normal reading with me would be. We may do that, but it's not just going to be all tarot reading. The main part of it is actually I do some meditation, energy work, a little bit of sound healing, and then it can go into many things such as herbal recommendations, dream work, ancestral work, and really there's so many other things. So that's just to keep it short.
just a little bit everything. So you were talking about it before, but how you can sort of not choose, but you can embody the energy and integrate it and bring it forward with you, or you can kind of look the other way, or reject it, or whatever, reaction you have to it. So what are those challenges that someone would face when trying to integrate the experiences, or the experiences happen and they don't even know what integration is or how to do it, kind of like my experience?
Yeah, totally. And just for reference, some experiences that we could be talking about is having what a lot of people call awakenings, which we'll talk a little bit about later, or having these, new spiritual experiences. Let's say you've seen a spirit for the first time in some way, or you felt one for the first time in some way, and that's kind of got you shook. So those are some examples. But yeah, there's so many challenges that arise because when we have these shifts, we shift, but the world around us generally doesn't. Especially we live in the United States, in the society we live in, we're not all going through these experiences together, generally having ceremonies. Some people are, but so the world that we live in can sometimes cause some resistance there. So that can be the job that we have, the relationships that we have may have shifted. And also, if we have dysregulated nervous systems, with which honestly, let's be real, I think most of us do, that can also make it challenging to integrate some of that new energy. And then also our ego and our inner dialogue, because the shift that we may have just gone through does not necessarily line up with these past versions of ourselves, or these relationships we've had, or these places that we're in.
So like life. Life
In a
makes it
long
hard.
way, yeah. Life makes it hard. Everything
God,
can
that's
make it
crazy.
hard.
And I just had one with you, and I feel like we should talk about it and sort of, because I mean, I work with you, I talk to you all the time. I hear integration. I don't know what was going on in my mind. I kind of just thought it was like adjusting to new realities, which it somewhat is, but it when it happens to you and you like need that support, it's a lot different than when you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
integration, like what a, powerful, strong word. So I think we should just tell people like some of the things that's going on that you do or that you did in
Mhm.
my session, so that they can have kind of a clear example, because like you said, it ranges. It's really kind of like on the fly and intuitive, and you use so many different things, but the energy healing that you do and did, that's pretty common that you do in
Yeah.
the
With
sessions, right?
at least I would say with every first session, and generally with all of them. Yeah.
And that was the craziest energy healing I've had in a while. Probably because I trust you though, and like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, when you go all in for it. But I was seeing visions, I was feeling like really heavy physical stuff, I was hearing things, I was channeling. It was really crazy, and it felt so good. Like it was so comforting in a way.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I was being held, like I call it being held by spirit, but it just felt like they were taking some stuff off of me that I was holding on to. So, and you
Totally.
just kind of go through the chakras, right? Or the energy centers, and do some sound healing on them.
Yes. It's exactly that. And that's a big part of integration, is finding ways to kind of keep the magic alive, so to speak. And that is a great way of doing so. So what was how would you compare that sound healing to like other modalities? Because it is a bit different. Like when we're talking about the sound healing that I do, it's very basic,
Hmm.
I think, in comparison to a lot of other
Yeah, you mean
practitioners.
like if someone was doing Reiki or someone was doing
Like if you went to a sound healer, like energy session or something, like it's not the
it
same.
was different in that, and this might not be for everyone. This is probably because I like trust you and all that stuff, but I sort of like went into a state of hypnosis. I felt my conscious mind kind of slip to the side, so that my subconscious was like, this is probably important. We should listen to this, you know what I mean? And I almost like kind of out of body, where it like went out of body, and then I was seeing it visually. I'm a really visual person, but I was seeing it visually working and doing its thing as you moved up each chakra. And then, yeah, so it was much different in that I felt like I was doing it. I feel like I was channeling it. And instead of like, sometimes if you get Reiki or you go to like an energy healer that uses crystals and stuff,
Yeah.
it feels like it's coming through them into you. This one
Yeah.
felt like it felt like it was coming down into me directly, and you were
Yeah.
just sort of my voice, like the guide, which was really great, and I think was probably more powerful, honestly.
Well, thank you. That's what I try to do. I'm glad you had that experience. Um, that makes me very happy. So I use a rattle, and it's a percussive beat, so it can be a bit hypnotic, and it's very lovely. Also with Raven, because especially during the first time, we do need to talk about things, but it's not the same as like talk therapy in any regards. And so just disclaimer out there, this is not the same as therapy. It's not a substitute for
Yeah.
therapy. It's something different. But we do have to talk about things just so that I can best support you, kind of see where you're at. What was the shift? What are some things that are making it difficult to maintain, or integrate those experiences, maintain that energy, and how can I support you in doing so? And then also with Raven, I gave a lot of herbal recommendations because she is an herbal person and I knew you would appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, that it was amazing, and it wasn't talk therapy, but in a way you were helping just the same as almost the meditation or the guide. You were sort of guiding me through my own inner dialogue of what happened and what I was actually feeling, because sometimes
Yeah.
we don't like take a second to go, wait, what emotions am I, like you were asking some hard-hitting questions that I was like, oh, these are tough to answer. Like
Yeah.
I really have to look within to answer these. And so I feel like even just those questions that you posed were helpful all by themselves,
Yeah.
let alone the fact that you're like, okay, now that you've told me this and I know what you're looking for, here's some recommendations. Like you did herbal stuff, but I know you do pretty much everything depending on what the person is receptive to. So,
Totally.
and that's important, I think, for people that are integrating, possibly alone, is
Yes.
that you could try multiple things. Like maybe one thing's not working, you could go ahead and try a
Hmm.
different tool. You don't have this one tool in the toolbox, and if it's not
Yep.
working, you're going to lose um, the new energy that you've welcomed
Hmm.
in, kind of thing.
Totally. Totally. And like you just said, it can be kind of up and down. The process can be up and down. If it dips a little bit, don't worry, you'll be fine. Um, uh, we also wanted to just share a few of our personal experiences so you have a better idea of like what we're talking about when we say integration and the experiences that you're integrating. So I have a short story that I'll start with. This was a big shift. I was 18 and I had just made a new friend, but it was like an instantaneous, such a beautiful connection. And I knew that this was going to be my friend for life. And we had known each other super long. It was late at night and just chilling. Background's important, y'all. You got to set the scene in your head. And she looked at me and she was just like, a completely different energy overtook her. And she was like, I am your spirit guide and I'm here to support you. And then immediately the energy shifted and she snapped back out of it into herself. And I was in a state of shock. And I was like, did you just say that? And she like laughed and was like, what are you talking about? And I just saw her channel a very beautiful spirit. It's such a beautiful message. And that was a huge shift because I'd never seen that before. Or I've seen channeling because people are channeling a lot, but not in that kind of way.
Like
So,
directly to you.
yes, to your face. So, it was possible that I could have just taken that and been like, that was weird. She was
Hmm.
messing with me. She was just fucking with me. Like, that didn't happen. Put that aside. But instead, it made me question the connection we have to spirit and like, what does that really look like? Because my perception before, I think, had been really different about the world we were in and spirituality. So, that is one example.
Um, yeah, that's crazy. I had never heard that story before, but that's amazing. I want someone to do that to me.
It was really intense. Like the vibe was so intense.
Yeah, you were like, did you at one point at all? Because I think a lot of people do this, where you just like, oh, I imagine that in my head,
Oh, I
because
totally gaslit myself. Yeah.
I feel like that's like the immediate reaction until it's like happened like 5 or 6 times of just like, oh, that was in my head. I didn't see
Right.
that. I didn't hear that. They didn't just say that to me.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because when someone looks you right in the eye, wait, you got to believe it, man.
There's the only other choice is denial.
Yeah. So I was having a hard time thinking of them. I mean, obviously I could think of like my first spiritual awakening. I've had a few after that, but I really want to talk about childbirth because I am
Yes.
a mother. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and that stuff was spiritually wild. And I think it's not talked about how spiritually crazy it is,
Mm-mm.
where not only childbirth in general, but when you're pregnant, you especially have some more psychic, you're more in touch psychically. It's just like
Yeah.
is. It's I consider it a fact based on my experience. Um, you're just a little bit more in tune. You're like connected. You obviously can. I was hearing my baby's thoughts, which was like totally wigging me out. And so I want to talk about childbirth though, because I was super afraid of childbirth. I was convinced I was going to die in childbirth. I was
Yeah.
very seriously afraid of it. And then when the time came down to it, I kid you not, they were like, okay, 10 centimeters, you're good. And, I had a
Yeah.
midwife and her dad was there. Instantly, I went to another plane. I literally watched my body next to me. And yeah, and I
Full
was
out of
just
body.
chilling with my guides, dude. They were like, just chill here, relax. Like, it's fine. It's enjoyable. It's good. I was
Wow.
on cloud nine. I was laughing. My midwife was like, wow, this was exceptionally mellow. And I was just like, and
I'm not
and
even
then
here.
yeah, and then I came to, and it felt like I got slapped into the ground. Like it just felt like I got dragged back to earth, and I realized like, holy crap, there's a living baby over
I have a
there on
baby.
on the other side of the room. I can't feel my body. Like, what's going on? And I think that that's not talked about a lot is this crazy shift of you were just pregnant, and obviously that's something, but afterwards, when they've come out and they're like a living, like
Yeah.
outside of your body, you can like see them.
Yeah.
It's like a whole other shift. And I definitely had some like, postpartum depression. And I really do think some of that for me personally was um, not integrating the experience. I was
That's
really,
huge.
yeah, I was like
That's
struggling from
hard.
going from pregnant to not pregnant because it's a very different way of life. I lost a lot of like what I considered my spiritual connection. Like I felt
Yeah.
like everything was quiet. Um, and which sometimes is the opposite is what you're talking about, like the medicine. If you go to a ceremony, it's almost the opposite where you're like, oh my gosh, I have this connection I didn't have before. And mine was different, but both
Right.
valid forms of life changing experiences. So I think if I would have gotten help
Totally.
integrating that experience, I probably would have worked through it better and felt more supported. Like moms would feel more supported getting this help. So that's just my perspective. We have a few
Wow.
examples for you guys. We were thinking of all of trying to look back on when we were integrating, which would be like not only your first spiritual awakening, but the successive ones afterwards, those smaller ones. Breakups, those are moving
It's a
out,
big one.
moving. Yeah, for me especially like grief, watching someone you love die,
Yeah.
those kinds of things, and childbirth. And then you had a few, right, that were interesting. I had an experience, but I do think a lot of other people have.
Oh, you mean like prophetic dreaming or
Hmm.
when you have those honestly life-changing dreams, or sometimes it's not a dream, maybe like an astral projection, out of body experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I didn't even think that, like the first time you astral project,
Mhm.
that's, or like when you get a really, especially if you haven't gotten your tarot read very much, or the
Yes.
first time you get your tarot read and it like
Yeah.
slaps super hard. And you're like, what just happened? This can't be possible. Like all of those thoughts go through your head of like, oh my gosh, what's my reality is not what it was before. Um,
Yes. And also what people commonly refer to as downloads or just getting new information into your energy field.
yeah, or just like I feel like sometimes too, and I wonder if maybe you can describe it or pinpoint it, but some of those times where you just literally feel your energy shift. Like it
Mhm.
was unintentional. You probably weren't even thinking a thought, and then all of a sudden you're like you wake
Yeah,
up or you
it
have
just
this like
happens.
literal shift physically that feels so like slightly disorienting.
Mhm.
I feel like that's what the integration helps you with, or at least for
Yeah.
me, is I was feeling disoriented and I feel like you were like, hey, this is forward. You're going sideways. This is forward, you know? And
Leave a little trail, little trail of candy. Yeah.
breadcrumbs. You're with Hansel and Gretel that shit, dude.
Yeah, because sometimes, I mean, not always, like it depends. Sometimes we honestly just totally have to let go of past versions of ourselves, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Um, really hard.
And
So,
then like this is also we're kind of in the midst of it, and it's something that people don't talk about, but what happens when you experience like these shifts or these awakenings or these like downloads where you're like, yeah, I want to embody this energy. I want to lose some of those habits, but then you find yourself like you said grieving the old you or really feeling pulled back or feeling
yeah.
like you aren't going to be able to keep this up. Like what happens when we choose not to integrate? Can it go smoothly too? Like
There's
what's
a
the spectrum?
variety of options because, yeah, we definitely can choose not to integrate. And sometimes we don't have the bandwidth, honestly, to integrate in our lives. Like sometimes life is really hard and a lot of stuff is going on and things will pass us by. So, just want to say it's never too late. If you feel like something happened in the past and you kind of put it aside, you can bring it back up. So it's not, if we don't do it in the moment, it's not a forever no. But also, just because you do choose a path where you're like recognizing integration doesn't always mean it's going to be super smooth. Sometimes there are these like bumps where you feel like you've regressed, or maybe you even feel like you're somehow like worse, quote unquote, than you were
Yeah.
before. And that can be hard. But then, it's just part of like the cycle. You'll go back up, it'll be okay. And sometimes it's not like that at all. Sometimes integration is a really smooth process. It just depends again on all of those things in our life that make it difficult. Because in an ideal, society, like everybody would be healing and we could share in this together, but we're not. So sometimes we have to come up against that. So yeah, it can look a
Right.
lot of different ways.
And I mean, you just said healing. So this is definitely something that I've been wanting to know is integration the act of healing? Like, is it related to healing? Like, is healing a result of successful integration? What do you think that relationship is between the two?
Yeah, I think it's definitely on the healing spectrum. It can, I wouldn't say it's the only definition of healing or the only thing that's healing, but yeah, it's definitely a part of the healing process.
And then that's why if we choose not to integrate right now, you can always pull it back up because that healing
Yeah.
is like available when you want it
When you're
to.
when you're able to do it too, because sometimes we aren't ready. Like
Right.
sometimes there's just harsh realities. Like sometimes we can't, but sometimes we can. Sometimes we can, and sometimes we do have like the availability to do so.
Do you have any suggestions for like if someone was like, you know what, I did have that experience and I did push it away and I want to pull it back up, but I'm not quite sure how to do that? Are there like questions that you could pose for your like pose yourself and be like to figure out to like bring it back up, or how would that go about?
I personally wouldn't bring up other people's trauma unless they asked me to. Like, and unless that I knew that they were like well supported. Like
I
if
mean
it's,
yourself though. Like
oh,
it like if I
yourself.
was like, hey, like, you know, if I was talking to myself and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to integrate this experience, but I'm not sure how to
To
pull it
bring it
up.
up.
Could I like journal? Like what could I do to try to pull that up?
But questions you can ask yourself are not necessarily about like the memory itself, but about how you felt and the feeling and where in your body. You don't need to keep reliving the experience. You don't need to remember all the details. You don't need to go zoom in 100% on it.
Yeah. Re-traumatize yourself. I've done that
Re-traumatize
so
yourself.
many
Yeah.
times. And then
Yeah.
you're not even ready again to like deal with it. Like you sit down with a
Yeah.
paper, and then you remember it and you're like, nope.
Never mind. So if you can focus on how it felt and then work on that like emotional, release, and that would probably be the best place to start.
That is fascinating. I feel like I could ask you 1,000 questions about this.
Yeah. And if you
I'm
don't
like
know where
thinking
it
them up
is,
right now.
if you don't know where, like if questions like that don't work well for you, you're like, I don't know, I feel really disconnected with my body, then that's a good sign to maybe do some like somatic work. And also
Okay.
you might function better like instead of just asking yourself and like trying to journal by doing like a sort of like a meditation or body journey, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm like gonna write this down. Genius. Yeah, I wonder too if there's um like hypnosis or like guided meditations for integration online or like I feel like I haven't seen integration anywhere for some reason and it's all new to me. So forgive me for asking like a trillion questions about this, but
Yeah, I don't totally know, to be sure. I haven't specifically looked for any on
I'm gonna look for
YouTube.
them, and if I find them, guys, I will put them
Yeah.
down below so that you guys can at least get sort of an example and maybe that works for you. But all of you do this like for a living. This is what you do. So you guys need to hit all of that because I've
Thank
only had
you.
one session. Um, and I feel like it's only been like 48 hours and every hour it's been like building upon itself. And I
Mhm.
feel like the momentum is like catching all by itself and I'm not really having to do too much. So, and I feel lots of good stuff, guys. That's all I can say. It was a pleasant experience. And if you have any questions, you have like social media and stuff, right? Like,
Yeah. If
okay,
you have any questions, you can find me at hi_little_flower on Instagram and TikTok. And I also have a website, www.hilittleflower.com. And I have like all my contact information there. So
perfect.
I know it's a weird kind of different offering uh, right now. So I understand if you still have questions, reach
Yeah.
out.
I think that you just got to do it. Like you just got to try that first session. Then you'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
this makes so much sense. Why it's hard to pinpoint and like exactly describe because it's so fluid. I mean, which is like water,
Right.
which is healing. So it
Which
makes
is
total
healing.
sense. So
Yeah,
they
you
can
can
just like,
talk about it very broadly, but
yeah. So they can just go on your website, right? And
mhm.
it's called integration or what is it
Yeah,
called when they're booking it? It's called an
it's
integration
just
session.
integration session.
Okay, perfect. That's amazing. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy we talked about this and that I got to experience this so you guys can get a vibe for what it is because I was going in thinking that I did not know what was
You
going
thought
on.
it was gonna be a tarot reading, I feel
I
like,
thought
because
it
I
was
do a
going to
lot
be
of those.
tarot, yeah. And you said
Mhm.
though that you do that sometimes, which is great. But it was not tarot. It was a lot of just talking to me and which a lot of people don't get sometimes is like this unbiased person that's just almost repeating what you said back to you so you can like have a mirror, you know what I mean? Type
Yeah, and just trying to open up the space for you to, explore things. So also, quick disclaimer, I did work in social work for a while, so all of this is through a trauma-informed lens. Like I'm not here to re-traumatize you. I know we were talking about trauma earlier, but that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to help you on your healing path. So, um
And we're going to talk about that, right? In another
yes.
podcast, we are going to do trauma informed psychic work or
Yes.
tarot, yeah, divination, those kinds of things, because it's really easy to re traumatize people or trigger people.
Yes.
And I think all of us, especially as tarot readers, can identify at least one time that has happened to them. Olivia's got some pretty gnarly examples that, you're just like, wow, I can't believe that person said that, or things like that. And so we're going to talk about that. And Olivia actually has education on this and has been working towards this and has been really trying to inform people about the fact that you can do these readings without hurting people, without traumatizing them, without bringing up things that don't need to be brought up, right?
Right. I can't wait to talk about it. Thanks, Raven.
Yeah.
And if you,
We're
I'm
gonna do
so
a
excited.
class too. So if you guys want, we will be talking about that in the future when we do a podcast on it. But just keep your eyes and ears open. We are going to be doing a class on it, and we are pretty entertaining teachers if you have not
Already
caught the
seen.
drift yet.
And if you want to support us, then please smash that subscribe on whatever platform you like. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, I think Buzzsprout. So
All of them, every single one.
lots of love.